Scottie Pippen had an interview with Patrick Bet-David that premiered today. It was like a 2 hour interview that was, I would say, very entertaining. I'm not a fan of Patrick Bet-David at all. I think he's a nut job, but this was a good interview where both of them went back and forth, and I enjoyed it. To me, it was a lot of fun. Just Patrick questioning Scottie and Scottie coming back with some of these crazy responses that left Patrick like dumbfounded. But it was an entertaining interview, and I would recommend it to anybody to watch. Just a great way to kill 2 hours of time if you need to kill 2 hours. Worth watching for sure. There was one part of the interview that really caught my attention. Well, a few parts, but one part where Scottie Pippen told Patrick that him and Michael Jordan were never close, that they never loved each other. They were not like brothers or best friends, anything like that. That in fact, according to Scottie Pippen, he said that him and Michael never had a dinner together outside of the team. They never had a dinner together ever. And they never hung out outside of work besides his training. That's the only time they hung out was training together and working out. So it was nothing for recreation that they ever did together outside of their jobs, that they weren't close like this. And I remember Patrick being shocked by this admission and just couldn't believe it. But I can believe it. Granted, I do think Scottie's not being 100% truthful. It's hard for me to believe that he never had dinner once with MJ outside of the team, because I remember Scott Williams, a power forward that played for the Bulls during the first 3P. He was like a bench player, and him talking about how he went to Michael Jordan's house several times during his rookie year to have dinners with him and how it was great. So to me, it's just hard to imagine that Michael wouldn't have someone like Scottie over for dinner who is of higher status on the team just for bonding. But I'll take Scottie's word for it, just even though I don't find it really that believable. But according to Scottie, he never had dinner with Michael, and they were just never hang out outside the court. So I definitely believe that part, that they were not close off the basketball court, and that they never hung out really for recreation or anything like that, that they just never clicked like that outside of the court. And I remember Patrick being shocked and kind of disappointed, which was funny. But I figured that out a long time ago, that Scottie and Michael were not best friends. Like I think anyone would have believed who had watched that team during the 90s. That as a kid, obviously, I believe that they were close, because as a kid, you just don't know. That you just see the high-fiving on TV, the smiles, the hugging, and all other stuff, and you think these guys are like brothers. They're like best friends, but the reality of it, they weren't. And I think that probably bothers a lot of people in my generation. I would say the millennial generation that grew up watching this team, early millennials, and I would say Gen X, who also grew up watching this team, that they could be disappointed by this stuff. But for me, it's not disappointing, because as you grow up, you mature as an adult, and you just from your own experiences, you're not close with all your colleagues, and maybe you don't have any closeness with any of your colleagues at all. That's a possibility. But you realize that your colleagues are not going to be your friends in most cases. They're just people you got to do the job with and get it done. And I just applied that just to Scottie and Mike, that they were colleagues working a job. Granted, this was like the dream job that they were working, but at the same time, them, like just like any other group of colleagues, had a goal to get stuff done, and they worked together to achieve it. And that was it. That was the end to the means, as they would say. But I think there's probably that disappointment among Chicago fans that they weren't as close as they thought they were when watching them on TV. And, there have been exceptions to that throughout the NBA, that they were teammates that were very close during championship runs, that were very close friends outside of those titles. Like, I look at my Spurs with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Ginobili, David Robinson. All those guys are close-knit and are still close-knit to this day off the court. So I guess maybe that bothers Chicago fans, that their teams were not as close as they thought they were, and they wanted to believe that because it made the story even more magical, those championship runs. But I definitely can believe that. I don't think Michael is an easy guy to be friends with. I don't think he is. Is he arguably the greatest player of all time? Yeah, I would say so. At least from what I've seen in my life, I can say he's a GOAT in my eyes, just comparing to the rest of the players I watched in my lifetime. But to me, Mike is not an easy person to be around, to be a friend of, because he's hyper competitive. Everything is a competition with him. That shit would be annoying, I think, for the regular person. I would hate that shit. Just always being a stupid competition every like 5 minutes with him. Like I could just imagine him trying to find out what I like to do and then him trying to find ways to beat me at it and being maniacal about it. Just so I can see how Michael is not a lot of people's cup of tea, to be honest. And plus, he's never gonna let you live it down when you lose to him. So for your mental sanity, I could see why why you wouldn't want to be his friend off the court if you're Scottie. Just it could be annoying, but yeah, and Michael was very demanding of his teammates, so I could definitely understand that. He wasn't an easy guy to play with. Granted, he was a great player and he was successful, but I just compare it to any other regular colleague that just there's certain colleagues or bosses you would not want to hang out with outside of work. And I apply that to Michael and Scottie in this case. So not shocking to me, not even disappointing to be honest. For me, it's just something that is acceptable and believable. So I guess I could take it in very well since I wasn't a Bulls fan growing up. The Spurs were my team. Granted, the Bulls got me into basketball, but the Spurs were my team. So I guess I'm not disappointed in it. But I can see if you're a Chicago Bulls fan that you can be very frustrated with this. And maybe if you're someone from my generation or just the generation before mine, Generation X, and you watch the Bulls, it can be very disappointing. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this.